6 of the Pixie Plan of Existence, Beautiful People Facade. It was odd to watch them change, even though it happened gradually over a couple weeks' time. It was hardly noticeable until one day it was impossible to ignore. Winnie grew thin and beautiful. Her dishwater blonde hair became the shade of goldenrod, her cheekbones higher, her bust bigger, and her legs longer. She grew almost 2 inches. Winnie now had California sun-kissed skin that made her look like a model. She was the Nikki Taylor of the town and had dethroned Madison. Jenna changed only slightly. Her hair, once a curly auburn bob, grew long and luxurious. Her eyes became a peculiar shade, amber with flecks of burgundy, crowned with thick black lashes. Freckles dotted her nose, adorning a clear ivory complexion. Jenna's already prominent canines became reminiscent of a vampire, and boy did she enjoy flashing her brilliant white smile. She wore her usual black ensemble, but added a sterling silver Pony Boy Forever necklace and bangle bracelets. They started drawing attention from both the boys and the girls. Whispers of jealousy or awe followed them. Finally, they were walking the halls with their heads held high. Jenna insisted on rebelling against rules. She became ever more daring and outspoken. There was an alternate spot open on the cheerleading squad, and Winnie tried out for it. Of course, she made the team without any real talent for the sport. Madison became Winnie's new frenemy, constantly putting her down but tolerating her on the squad. "It's good you're so husky, Winnie. We always need a stable bottom for the pyramid," Madison sneered. Kat noticed that kids in different circles had started dressing like them, wearing loads of black. Since she was closest to Jenna and Winnie, an uncomfortable amount of attention was bestowed upon her too, but not the good kind. Conversations didn't come easy with anyone, especially since she'd been labeled stuck up. Her shyness made her more mysterious, though she didn't realize it. Mysterious wasn't exactly a good thing to be in 8th grade. She was often the target of gossip. Girls from other social circles acted peculiar, simultaneously showing disdain for who she was friends with, but still copying her style. It was absolutely maddening, but there wasn't anything she could actually do about it. The thing was, she knew in her gut it was all fake, part of the beauty spell. They liked Winnie and Jenna not for who they truly were, but the illusion they created. It wasn't a surprise. The disguises were quite becoming. In the end, they were still disguises, and it bothered Kat. She grew very moody while Jenna and Winnie relished the attention. "Kat, what's up, dude? You're so quiet lately," Jenna asked. "Nothing. It's just everyone still hates us, but they're trying to look like us. Have you noticed?" Kat said sullenly. She felt the way the weather was outside, rainy and depressing. "If it makes you feel better, it's not important what they think about us. We know we're awesome and things are going to get better. Ruby's grimoire will see to that." They were obsessively learning magic, practicing simple spells nearly every night from Ruby's grimoire, sometimes in the woods and other times up in Jenna's room. As they fiddled around, Kat discovered she was especially good at spells that required fire. She found that if she spit in it, the flames grew taller and became a greenish blue of white-hot light. "It's a good thing that fire likes you, Kitty Cat. Maybe you can give me some inspiration for a spell I'm working out. I want a devil's tongue," Jenna exclaimed. "A devil's tongue? Like a forked tongue? That's gross." "No!" Jenna let out a belly laugh. "No, dummy. Like I'm able to spit mad burns at people." Kat helped Jenna with what she dubbed the burn spell. This wasn't in Ruby's grimoire. However, as the girls had come to learn from instructions left in the back of the Book of Shadows, they could create their own spells. Rhyme was very important, and so were the words. They must be chosen carefully. Jenna's spell did exactly what they wanted it to do. When they were being taunted by Madison and her little group, she was able to quip witty retorts that gave them all catbutt faces. Who hasn't thought of the perfect comeback hours or days later? With this spell, they rolled off Jenna's tongue as if she were Shakespeare. Well crafted indeed. Kat still hated going to lunch. It was the worst part of her day, so she usually skipped it. Occasionally, when she did eat, she would catch herself staring across the lunchroom at Jet. Her attraction to him was undeniable, so she did her best to hide it. Jet was the conquest of almost every pretty girl in the school, even the seniors. Most of the time, she was reading up on the history of the craft. Her back pressed against a cold locker while she ate an apple. Being the outcast wasn't so bad, especially after she created a deafness spell that allowed her to tune out any negative comments directed her way. To her, this was better than Jenna's burn spell, because she honestly didn't hear a thing Madison said to her. Smiling at her was easy, and that seemed to piss her off. It was a Wednesday. She was really hungry because she'd skipped breakfast, so Kat braved the loneliness of lunch, stealing glances at Jet. After he caught her staring at him for the millionth time, he came over and sat down next to her. "So, let's try this again. Do you want some company for lunch?" he asked jokingly. His charming smile was so infectious. This time she got it right. Kat let a slow smile slide across her face. "Yeah, you're like the only person I kind of know here. Thanks, Jet." He sat down next to her. After an awkward pause, she started babbling. "I know I'm your sister's friend, and I really appreciate you sitting with me. I didn't mean to blow you off last time. Jet rolled his eyes and interrupted. "It's really not a problem. No biggie. Sucks not knowing anybody in your lunch period." He pushed his basket of fries over to her, and they shared them while making small talk. Jet bragged about football, and Kat pretended to not be impressed. It was the end of September, and finally she wasn't eating an apple at her locker every day. Still, some days she skipped. Jet had his table, and she didn't want to make him decide between being nice to her and hanging out with his friends. On the days she actually braved the lunch commons, he usually sat with her. She wondered if he was interested in her or just doing a favor to Jenna. Maybe a little bit of both. Either way, it felt really good to have someone to sit with. Somehow, channeling her insecurity, it was on one of those glorious days Madison stared at her with envy. When Jet was to throw away the garbage, she walked by with her entourage and hissed maliciously. "He feels sorry for you and his freak show sister, that's all." When she ate at her locker, it gave her an opportunity to practice a few of her abilities. Her befuddled English teacher passed her in the hallway once, and he was carrying an overfilled briefcase, papers spilling out everywhere, obviously in a hurry. "He who sees me obeys me," she repeated under her breath 3 times. His eyes met hers with a startling gaze. She did not realize the power she commanded. Only after he passed her did he break away from awkwardly looking at her. Mr. Garrison was a happily married man, a hippie type in his 40s. He had no interest in young girls. Yet if she asked him to do something while she held his gaze, he would do as she commanded. She instinctively knew this and decided that she wouldn't be using that command on anybody. Although it would be tempting to use it on Jet, she decided that she wanted his feelings for her to be real. The days passed, and she was the almost constant companion of Jenna. Winnie had grown increasingly despondent. Her blonde hair and skinny body had secured her the place of whipping boy in Madison's inner circle. It was frustrating to watch her bask in the shadow of Madison. She met Jenna and Kat less and less, missing a few sessions of casting, which bugged the crap out of Jenna. She was furious with Winnie, actually. Instead of confronting her about flaking out, she threw herself into her passion for rebellion. It was extremely difficult for Kat. She found herself having to defend her relationship with Jenna to her overbearing and overprotective mother. "She's just so wild. I'm worried that she's influencing you in the wrong ways. You never wear any color anymore," Delia complained to her. "Mom, stop. I'm sorry I don't dress like I'm in 3rd grade anymore. Band t-shirts and ripped jeans are the style. It's grunge, Mom, and it's okay." Delia let out a sigh and muttered, I didn't know looking like a homeless person was so stylish. Sometimes Kat accompanied Jenna to one of her many smoke breaks on school grounds. They always parked Jenna's car as far back in the student parking lot as possible. It was the overflow for the main lot, which was used by the teachers. She and Jenna would slip out there between periods. Jenna was always complaining about Winnie and how fake she'd become. She was obviously quite hurt while Winnie was playing prom queen. Winnie mostly ignored them at school, but still took an occasional ride home. She started to get in the habit of calling Kat to ask what Jenna had been saying about her. Kat hated being in the middle of both of them. She wished that Jenna would just tell Winnie what she really thought about her ditching her real friends, especially for a fake group of girls that treated her like a day-old dog turd. She never said anything to Winnie out of loyalty to Jenna. The truth was, Kat had always been the third wheel. Now she finally had the relationship with Jenna that she deserved. It was easier without Winnie's bossy personality around. It was odd when Winnie approached her in the hallway. This enraged her. Winnie knew full well that Madison would never be allowed there by Jenna. Kat took a deep breath and calmed her racing heart. It was a bluff, and she was wise not to fall for it. Really, she replied with a raised eyebrow, you think Madison would still hang out with you if she knew about any of this? We would all be labeled freaks, and you're kidding yourself if you don't think Jenna wouldn't kick her ass if she stepped one foot there. Winnie turned the other direction and stuck her nose in the air. After a safe distance, she called over her shoulder, Whatever, I'll see you there. The war of words between them had ended. Kat wasn't sure who'd won, but she'd at least held her ground. Unfortunately, she wasn't as crafty as Winnie, who was already at Jenna's car when she arrived. She and Jenna were hugging. I'm sorry, were the only words she heard as she approached. Craptastic. Winnie was going to get her way again. Kat sat in the back while Winnie rode shotgun. She and Jenna were gossiping about a few people in their grade that Kat didn't really know. Jenna flipped the bird at Madison as she drove past her. That was childish, Winnie scolded Jenna. You just have to accept that I'm happy to be friends with them, too. It didn't take long for Winnie and Jenna to descend into an argument. I just don't get it. She's made her life miserable, and she still does. You have nothing in common, and Winnie shook her head vehemently at Jenna's words. You don't know how much easier things have been at home. My parents are off my case. I get a free pass for just about everything, and Madison isn't as horrible as she seems. Did you ever think that maybe you're just not that cool, Jenna? Yeah, that's it, Jenna said sarcastically, and they sat in silence for the rest of the way home. Before she got out, Winnie squeezed Jenna's hand. I've missed you, and you too, Kat, she said in a syrupy voice, turning back to look at her. Kat muttered, yeah, right, under her breath, but didn't make a scene. Jenna was just going to have to figure out who Winnie really was on her own. When she did, Kat would be there for her. Well, we can get together at Shrinington and do that thing you wanted to try, Jenna offered. What a sucker she was. The next few days were very interesting. Winnie paid attention to Jenna more than usual. She rode with them home from school, and the two were eating lunch together again. Of course, Jenna hadn't been lonely when she and Winnie weren't talking because she'd been receiving a lot of male attention. Bad girls always get the guys. Kat felt as out of place as ever. She wasn't the pretty one, she wasn't edgy, she was the younger of her best friends. She could feel the inevitable creeping up on her, the drama. School was more complicated than she wanted it to be. Kat was good at math, and so she was in the upperclassmen wing for Algebra 2. She noticed Winnie was hanging on Jet when she walked past the area known as Jock Row, the lockers where the athletes hung out between classes. She had her arm around him and was talking flirtatiously. He'd never given her the time of day before, but Kat could see that it obviously changed. Winnie gave her a sly smile as she passed and then called out in a sugary sweet voice, Oh, hey, Kat, I'll see you later, okay? So they were buddy-buddy again, huh? She put on a fake smile and waved at her. She caught Jet's gaze but immediately looked at the ground. These days it felt like he was her only friend, and she really hoped that she wasn't going to lose him, too. It was nice that he listened to some of the girl drama that was going on between the three of them. He never judged what she had to say, and it seemed to really amuse him. Now she wondered if it was a good idea that she vented some of her frustrations. Jenna simultaneously hated and loved Winnie. She hated that Winnie had found her way into Madison's entourage, but still loved her best friend. Kat knew she was a band-aid for the situation, so she did her best to please Jenna. They were growing close, both of them avoiding the stresses at home. The ride home with Jenna and Winnie was somewhere between exciting and awkward. Exciting because they were going to try some new spells, and awkward because Winnie insisted on talking about her growing affection for Jet. It grossed Jenna out and made Kat furious, even though she didn't have any reason to be. It wasn't like she had any claim to him. Jet was just Jenna's twin brother and sometimes pitied her enough to be a companion at lunch. Kat tuned out the girls in the front seat by pulling out her book. Even though they weren't meeting as regularly as when they first started the circle, Kat spent a lot of time reading the red candle and the white candle. It was a book for beginners of the craft, and it had a lot of information about Sabbaths, ritual work, and spirituality. She only looked up from the book when Jenna stopped at her house, lit a cigarette, and blew it back at her. "Kitty Cat, what's so interesting about that book?" she questioned. Kat looked up. "Oh, I thought you read it. There's some cool spells and information about the spirituality of the craft. Divination, women of the world, that kind of thing." Jenna snatched the book out of her hand and skimmed the page. "Oh, yeah, I remember. There is some cool stuff in here, but the spells are super weak. Nothing like what's in Ruby's grimoire." Kat was confused. The spells had worked just fine for her. Earlier in the week, Kat set a fire spell to light some candles on her dresser. Fingertip burning bright, make the candle from dark to light. Her fingertip had produced a flame. It freaked her out so much that she shook her hand wildly to put it out. It didn't stop burning until she found a cup of water by her bed and dipped her finger in it. Even then, it didn't go out right away. Kat didn't mention her bizarre experience to Jenna. She decided that playing along was the best way to go. Yeah, totally weak. So, when is Winnie going to give you a chance to look at Ruby's book? You still want to find that healing spell for your mom's cancer, right? Jenna handed the red candle and the white candle back to Kat. She shook her head as she exhaled a cloud of smoke out the driver's side window. "I don't know. I might just have to break into her locker and take it one of these days. She's so flaky now that she hangs out with Madison so much." "Are you sure it's because of Madison? I always thought she was just kind of flaky," Kat said half seriously. Jenna let out a gregarious giggle. "I guess it's just more unbearable now or something." Before she got out of the car, Jenna produced a small gift from her bag. "Happy birthday! It's today, right? October 5th? Kat's green eyes lit up when she opened the box to find a Celtic-style sterling silver ring. "Oh, wow, thanks! I didn't even know you knew my birthday." Jenna gave her a wink. "It isn't much, but it was free. You're a good luck charm, Kat. 5s are always lucky." Kat shook her head, but the smile erupted from her lips anyway. Her dark hair covered the flush in her cheeks. She was so grateful that Jenna did actually care about her, even if she had an odd way of showing it. Kat had never held back her disapproval of Jenna's stealing. Jenna snatched at it. "I can take it back if you don't want it," she taunted. "No, you know I love it. Anyway, I'll see you guys later if I can get out of the house." Kat got out of the car and immediately slipped the ring on her middle finger of her right hand. Then she doused herself in a bunch of body spray. She hoped her mom didn't smell the stale stink of cigarettes on her. When Kat got inside the house, the tension hit her like a gut punch. Her dad was waiting on the couch reading the paper, and her mom was busying herself in the kitchen. She threw her book bag on the bench near the door. "What are you doing here?" His face looked drawn and tired, but she still wasn't going to cut him any slack. I thought I'd come to see you for your birthday. Could I take you out to dinner? He asked politely. Kat was surprised. Money was still very tight. Just us? What about Mom? Delia entered the room. Don't worry about me. Just go have a nice birthday dinner with your dad. It's okay. Really. Actually, I have plans tonight. I'm supposed to hang out with Winnie and Jenna. The disappointment on her dad's face made her feel better. Well, how about we go now? It can be an early dinner, and I'll have you back in time so you can hang out with your girlfriends, he offered. Kat hated betraying her mom, so the anger she felt toward her father did not dissipate. She knew it took guts for him to come here, so she reluctantly agreed. The conversations they had at dinner were forced. They both danced around talking about anything real. Kat couldn't wait for it to be done, and this made her feel guilty. Her dad pulled a small box from his pocket. I know you've been wanting one. She opened it to see a pager, the newest technology. It allowed people to call you and leave their numbers so you could find a phone and call them back, wherever you were at. It's used, but it works, he explained, a touch of shame in his voice. Kat felt completely overwhelmed. Thank you, Dad. You didn't have to do that. Her emotions tumbled like a cylinder dryer. Gratitude, guilt, excitement, confusion. When he finally dropped her off, she gave him a quick hug. Bye, Dad, was the only thing she could muster. Kat, He searched for words, but she didn't wait around to hear them. She jumped out of the car and turned back to give him a wave. He just nodded his head and pulled out of the driveway. Mom! I'm home, but I'm taking off for Jenna's, she called down the hallway toward her mother's room. Kat grabbed her bag and headed out the door to Shrinington. After the awkward dinner with her dad, Kat couldn't stand to be near either of her parents. She left before her mom could come out and bombard her with questions. The green stalks of the corn had turned a golden color. Their leaves rustled against her as she waded through them. The absolutely magnificent trees were ablaze with color. A slight breeze made them sound as if they were whispering secrets to her. For some reason, the sound sent tingles up her spine. She felt like she was being watched. Kat looked around, but saw nothing but amber leaves floating to the ground, and the rays of the setting sun shining through some of the bare branches. As she walked along Bluff's trail, she felt a gust of wind and heard the crunch of leaves like someone was approaching. She whirled around, expecting to see someone. Nothing. It's just the wind, Kat. You're fine, she said to reassure herself. Kat's mind wandered to the task at hand. For some reason, Winnie was much more excited about the spell than the others. Even though each one they tried had succeeded, Kat became irritated at their lack of effort lately. They were learning so slowly. At first, she hadn't been into this magic stuff. Now that she was researching it on her own, she couldn't fathom why Jenna and Winnie weren't taking it as seriously. She made up her mind that tonight she was going to take Ruby's grimoire from Winnie and find a healing spell for Jenna's mom. Maybe she would do a love spell for her own parents, and then things could get back to normal. Although she was angry and disappointed in her father, she knew her mother still loved him. Watching Delia in misery as her happy marriage fell apart was brutal. Kat decided that it was time for the coven to get their priorities straight. No more vapid crap dealing with insignificant issues facing them at school. When she pushed through the colorful Virginia creeper into Shrinington, she was startled to see Jenna and Winnie had already arrived. It was nearly 6 o'clock, and the sun was very low in the sky, casting eerie shadows. Candles had been placed in the divots on the bluff walls. They'd already drawn a pentacle with chalk on the slab. Hey, guys, am I late? She asked, worry tinging her voice. Jenna shook her head with a smirk on her face. No, we just got here a little faster than you. Didn't you see us run past you? Kat realized that the rustling leaves she'd heard must have been them, moving abnormally fast and passing her on the trail. Jenna saw the hurt look on her face. Why hadn't they stopped and shared the spell they'd used with her? Oh, come on, Kitty Cat, don't be so sensitive. We were running late, so Winnie found this spell that would allow us to move a little quicker than usual, Jenna reassured her. We knew you weren't far behind, so don't be mad, okay? Winnie pleaded. She smacked her lips, which looked very dry and chapped. I'm so thirsty. Does anyone have any water? Jenna looked parched too, as she rummaged through her bag. Okay, well, then let's make this quick. I want to get home and get something to drink. I only have a little water, and we need it for the spell, Jenna said crossly. The girls took out their altar tools. Jenna placed the cauldron in the middle of the pentacle and threw 3 pinches of salt into it. Then she lit all the candles and smudged the circle with some sage. Cat set out the chalice and filled it with wine from the flask. Jenna took a big swig after Cat handed it back to her, and then she passed it to Winnie. When it was offered to her, Cat took 2 big sips. She needed it. Finally, Jenna went around with her lighter and lit each of the 4 corner candles on the incense that had been placed on the libation dish. The bell was set out next to the goblet, and each girl fetched her wand. Cat had put a little more effort into hers. She'd taken it home, scraped it with a sharp knife, and painted it the same as the cauldron she'd found, bronze with tones of teal. Ready to call the directional guardians? Winnie asked. They made the circle, held hands, and started chanting. When that was done, Winnie took the box of salt and spilled it around the circle. They sat facing each other with their legs crossed. Winnie was the conductor of this spell, so it was only she that was to speak. She opened the grimoire and started reading the strange language. Mino hoče vajnaka vimjesto deravaka luda, smertaka plaća krova, isha vajnaka. Winnie repeated the spell thrice. She immediately rang the bell, drank a sip of wine from the chalice, and passed it to Cat, who also took a sip. Then Jenna finished it and put it back on the ground. Winnie took an acorn from the ground and put it into the cauldron that was filled with water. Then she took the incense, threw it in with the acorn, water, and salt. Last she took a sprinkle of water from the cauldron and flicked it over her left shoulder. Then she blew out the god and goddess candles. Well, it's done. We can close the circle now. What did we just do, and what the hell was the acorn for? Jenna asked. Winnie shrugged her shoulders. I don't know. I just felt like putting the acorn in the dish. No big deal. There are only a few spells in Ruby's book that are in this strange language, so I wanted to try it. Cat looked at Winnie incredulously. You mean we just cast a spell and we have no idea what type of magic it is? Winnie, we could have called up a demon or something. How could you be so careless? Winnie rolled her eyes. Look around. I don't think anything happened. Maybe we weren't saying the words right. Plus, there's no such thing as demons. Grow up. Jenna was pissed off, too, but she struggled to keep the peace. I agree with Cat. That was pretty stupid, Winnie. Winnie pursed her lips at being admonished by them, but didn't argue back. Cat snatched the book from her hands and handed it to Jenna. I think it's your turn to have this, she said, holding it out. Let's get this place cleaned up and go. It's dark. I'm really thirsty, and we just did something we don't understand, Jenna said wearily as she grasped the Book of Shadows to her chest. When they stepped out from the cave onto Bluff's trail, the entire atmosphere of the woods had changed. There were swarms of bats circling above them, even though the sun hadn't gone down completely yet. The wind was blowing wildly, causing the acorns to fall from the oak trees like rain. They pelted the girls, causing them to shield their heads with their backpacks. I think we need to get out of here fast, Cat bellowed. Jenna grabbed her hand while trying to keep her head covered. Okay, repeat after me. Moving like the wind through the trees, grant us quickness in our feet, legs, and knees. At last we are fast until the fast will not last. Thrice the spell was chanted as they trudged through the forest together, their voices high-pitched and eerie. Nothing much seemed to happen at first. Cat's legs didn't feel or appear any different. However, when she started to sprint, a tingling sensation whipped up from her feet. As she was running, she noticed that her breathing was even, but she was covering much more ground than she normally would. At the edge of the wood, her legs started to feel like lead. The three of them walked through the cornfield, heavy legs and heavy breathing. The dogs in the neighborhood were going crazy barking. Were they barking at them? It was dark now, and Jenna was using her lighter to see. Kat became acutely aware of her thirst. It burned in her throat and moved down into her lungs. Water! You guys, I'm so thirsty. I really need a drink, she complained. The girls came to Kat's house. She couldn't wait to quench this violent thirst and licked at her dry lips. In the glow of the porch light, she caught sight of her friend's startling appearance. Jenna and Winnie's lips were nearly the color of their skin. Their faces were abnormally tight, as if they'd each had a facelift. None of them were talking. The aching burned like fire in the back of their throats. Kat grabbed the garden hose and handed it to Jenna, who drank for what seemed like an eternity. Afterward, she looked nearly normal again, except for the dark bluish-purple bags under her eyes. Winnie went next. It was obvious she needed the water more than Kat did. When Kat finally drank, it was absolutely blissful. The water slipped down her throat to squelch the flames emanating from her lungs. Jenna's hoarse voice broke the silence. She sounded like an old crone that had been smoking for 50 years. I think the spell is best used for emergencies. Kat nodded in agreement. That pretty much was one. What do you think we did? She was worried about the reaction of the forest to the spell. Winnie didn't take any responsibility. It'll be fine. Jeez, you guys, it was just some wind making the acorns fall, she said, her voice raspy. Of course, Winnie would try to minimize any damage that was done. Kat pulled the blankets up over her head, trying to drown out the sound of the wind, which was still roaring outside. The branches scratched at her window like a feline scraping a wooden door with its nails. She pondered the possibility that they'd unleash something far more powerful than they realized. It's nothing. Just a wind spell in German or something, she whispered to herself. The churning leaves became still around midnight, and Kat finally drifted off into oblivion.